Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be creating a hologram shader with the new graph shader tools included with Unity 2018. This is a very exciting feature since writing shaders by hand is a somewhat complicated task, and with this tool it can be easy and even a fun process. Before we start, have a look at the finished result. We'll get started after the intro. We'll make a new Unity project. You have to have Unity 2018.1 or higher, and after pressing new we have to choose from the templates here lightweight RP preview. This is the only one that the new shader graph tool works with at the moment, but obviously all of them are gonna be added later. Let's call it hologram shader project. Okay, let's create it. Okay, now that the project is open, you can see you have an example scene here, but we're not gonna use this one. Let's just create another one. Go to file and say new scene. It's a good idea to go to window, package manager, and check that you have the render pipeline updated by pressing update up here. Okay, now we can go back and let's create a folder in here. Let's call it props, and I already have a few 3D objects prepared that we're gonna use to visualize our hologram. So let me just copy them in here. There we go. So we have the planet Mars from the previous tutorial, and we're also going to use that script that we've created last time to make some asteroids rotate around Mars. So I'll move that script also into our project. The script we call gravity. Okay. Let's put the props in our screen. This would want to be like a hologram projector. It's not the best one, but it will do for what we need. Also, by the way, you can find all of this in the description down below. If I put there a link from where you can download all of those if you want to use them to follow along. For the asteroid, let's extract the material because we will want to modify the shader on that material later on, and also for Mars as well. If we go to material up here and say extract material, now we have the material outside of the prop. Let's extract the material for the hologram projector as well because we want to modify that as well. There we go. And if we go to the material here, I've also included an emission texture. So if we go to the material and then press emission, and let's select the emission material, we can make those little things glow. Okay, so now let's put the planet as well. Let's make the planet bigger as well. Actually, we'll want to do all of the objects bigger so it works nice with our gravity script. Let's also move the camera to this angle by finding the angle and selecting the camera and pressing Ctrl Shift F. Let's select those objects without the directional light. Okay, and add a rigid body, add a sphere collider, there we go, and add the script gravity as well. For the planet, let's check that it's a planet and put 0 in here, and let's increase its mass, let's say 10,000 compared to 1 for the asteroids. And for all of them we have to use gravity because we're not using the unity gravity. And let's give the asteroids a lateral speed much higher, let's say 10,000 instead of 1,000. And let's there we go, now it orbits the planet, that's good. Okay, now let's actually do the shader for our planets and make them look as holograms. So in here, if we press right click and let's say create shader PBR graph, and let's call this hologram shader, and let's open it up by double clicking it, and I have it here on the other monitor. Okay, so this is the master node. You can actually recognize all of the things that you see in the material, usually the albedo, normal, the emission, metallic, and other stuff. So all of the modifications we want to do will have to be connected to this one. So this is actually the final render of the shader. Okay, so first of all, we want to add the texture. So let's right click and say create node. And it's the texture to the asset. Let's make a property out of this so we can actually see it in our material and attribute whatever texture we want. So if we right click it and say convert to property, it makes it a property, and we now can see it up here, and we can also rename it if we want, but for this example it's okay to let it as texture. And if we press and drag, we should be able to go and put it to the albedo, but as you can see it doesn't let us. So we have to pass through another node called sample texture 2D, and all we have to do is connect it here to texture, and then from RGBA connect it to the albedo. There we go, now we have the texture, and if we save, let's save and see how it looks. Go back to this. Let's select the Mars material, for example, and let's go to shader. You can find it here in graphs. Look, it's called hologram shader. You can see we have a field for the texture up here. Okay, now let's continue. So the next step is we want to put some strips over the texture that makes it look a little bit like it's shaking or something like that, like we usually represent holograms in sci-fi. So I've actually already prepared a texture here. I'm just gonna drag it into the project. It's just like a strips texture. Okay, so we'll need another one of these for that. So let's just create another texture to the asset. Let's make it a property, and then add the sample texture to D. There we go. We can also name this one hologram style texture. What we might also want to do is to change the tinting color of our texture so it looks a little bit differently, like bluish, for example. It's used in some sci-fi games. So let's create a new node called color. Let's add the color node. And for this one, we want to also make it a property. So let's convert it to a property. And let's rename it hologram tint. Now we want to combine the texture with the color and then send the output to the PBR master. So let's create a multiply node and send the color to B and send the RGB texture to A. And let's delete this one. And now from the output, we send it to the albedo. There we go. Let's save and go back to our project and see how it looks. Now, if we select the Mars material, we can select a texture, a hologram style, and a tint. The tint is black at the moment. We can make it bluish. And let's put the texture, which was the Mars texture. There we go. Now it's already a little bit blue. And let's put the hologram style texture as the strips texture. At the moment, nothing happens because we don't combine them. So let's go back to our shader, and we want a multiply for this, for combining those two as well. So let's create another node, another multiply node, and from this texture, let's drag it to B, and from this multiply, let's drag it to A, and now from this output to albedo. Let's save the asset again, go back, and you can already see we have a few strips. It looks okay, but it's not amazing at the moment. So let's go back to our shader. We want to make it, the surface not be opaque but transparent. Now we want to control the size of our strips as well and to make them move. So let's add a few more things to our shader. Let's add a tiling and offset node. We will need this for our strip texture down here. We output this to UV. To make it move, we will have to modify the offset over a certain period of time. So let's add a time node and an integer, which is gonna be the speed. Let's make this into a property so we can modify it in the material. There we go. Let's rename it to speed. And from those two, we are going to use multiply again. And we'll combine the speed with the time. So time goes to A, speed goes to B, and then the output goes to the offset. To make it smaller or bigger strips, we want to modify tiling. So let's add, this is gonna be a vector 2. Let's make this into a property as well. Let's call it hologram tiling. And the output goes to tiling down here. And then we also have to add something to the UV called a screen position. And this goes here to the UV. Now let's hit save and go back to Unity. And now if we have a look at the material, you can see now we have tilling here. Let's just say 1, 1, 1 for now. And we should also have a speed. Actually, much better than what I've did. You can input a number here. But since this is very fast, 1 is very fast and 0 is not moving at all, what we can do is use a slider instead of an integer. So let's create a node called slider and make it into a property. We'll leave it between 0 and 1. Let's convert it to property. Let's delete this old one and use this instead. And let's be sure to go up here and delete speed and call this one speed. There we go. Let's save it again and go back. So now we can just use the slider to make it move. And we can also increase the strips like this. And to make it a little bit more interesting, what we can also do is go back to the shader, and our texture output here will also go not only to the multiplier, but also will go directly to the output of the emission, like this. This should make it a little bit more interesting. Let's save the asset and have a look. Actually now it bypasses the blue, so let's do it from the multiply instead. From the multiply where it adds the color as well. So let's save it. Okay, now it looks a little bit more interesting. It looks like it's glowing. Let's increase the strips a little bit more, make it more interesting, and maybe the speed. Let's do the same for our asteroids. We just have to modify the asteroid material. Let's add the hologram shader, put a bluish tint on them, maybe more towards blue. We need the texture asteroid. We need the hologram style texture, the strips. And let's make those a little bit more like that. And actually it might be better if we would use the same color for both. So I like this color better. Let's put it on the Mars material as well. There we go. Now the effect is a little bit subtle. So what we can do is invert our colors. And we can do that by creating another node called 1 minus. So here, before we actually multiply it with the normal texture, we can inverse our strip texture. So let's go through the minus and put the output to A here. Let's press save asset. This should make it a little bit more pronounced, not very much more, but a little bit more pronounced. And finally, maybe let's put a light under here to make it like the hologram projector is actually projecting those things up in the air. So let's use a light. Let's use a point light. Let's put it down here. Let's increase the range. Make it bluish. There we go. Let's increase the range even more. And maybe the intensity a little bit. and now it looks like this is actually projecting those. And basically that's it. Now I'm gonna move the camera here and let's play and see how it looks. There we go. We have a hologram projector. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, give it a like or a share. If you want to see more content like this, please subscribe. And if you have the possibility, please consider supporting me on Patreon from just $1 a month. See you next time.